Welcome
Okay.
in, everyone. Today we have a very important video, a little bit of a different style as normal. We are both coming at you today as opposed to just me talking in your ear holes. We are entering what will probably be the busiest draft weekend of the summer, so it's nut crunching time, and we are here to talk about 8 players, four from each of us that we cannot stop drafting right now. When you are in the draft room, a guy that you just cannot stop yourself from clicking. I'm joined here with Dom. I'm excited to talk through these names. I think we agree on a lot of them. I wouldn't say we agree on all of them, but looking forward to the discussion. Again, we're going to have lots to talk about, so I don't want to be too verbose on an intro, but I will pass it over to him for his first player. Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's not waste any time. My favorite pick for 2026, it's going to be Kenneth Walker. I'm sure you've seen this all over your feed as far as the Instagram post, but let me tell you the why behind it. He's currently going as the RB12 in drafts right now, but he's criminally undervalued. He finally is in a bell cow workload. He was splitting time with Zach Charbonnet last season in Seattle. However, one of the big coordinator changes here in Kansas City is going to be Eric Bieniemy, who is replacing Matt Nagy in the Kansas City system. In the past, he has always favored the running backs, and I really do expect that Walker should see 15 to 20 touches per game. This is a guy that can do it. He was ranked third in the entire NFL in yards after contact on that minimal workload. So I think he's in an area where it's the late second round. I'm willing to pounce on him. If you're able to pair him with a guy like Bijan or Gibbs, I think it will definitely make your life a whole lot easier targeting those middle round wide receivers. But curious to hear what your feedback is. I'm just a big fan of Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I mean, I see it with K9 too. He's quite tantalizing. I don't think that in any serious draft you're going to be able to pair him with Bijan. I doubt that's going to be something you're going to be able to do. But I mean, it makes sense, all of it, if you think about like how Kansas City is building this thing out. Like they didn't really do anything with any other playmakers this offseason. Like Ken was the guy that they went and got. No new receivers. They invested in the O line, which should be interesting. And yeah, he's going to have every chance to do it. I think he's just got to stay on the field. I mean, obviously, all the camp reports have been great. I'm definitely in on K9 as well. I feel like people are sleeping on Andy Reid kind of being a kingmaker for fantasy running backs, like when he has a good one. I think it's just been like a little bit underrated, like how dog shit the running backs have been in Kansas City the past like 5 years. But if you think all the way back to when Big Andy was over in, back even when he was in Philly, like the Brian Westbrook days, you have LaShawn McCoy, you have Jamal Charles, even like first stint Kareem Hunt before they had to get rid of him for some extracurricular reasons. If he has a guy in there, it's someone that they will feed the ball and can be really good in a fantasy setting. And I think that they're probably going to try and run this offense more through K9. Because yeah, I mean the Chiefs have obviously won the Super Bowls and stuff, but like their offense has kind of sucked for the past couple of years. So I think that they're probably going to try and switch things up a little bit. Always a good thing to get Matt Nagy out of town. I agree with that point as well. So yeah, I mean I like K9 as well. I think he's a guy that I'd be cool taking all the way up to like the 1-2 turn.
Yeah.
It's a get your guy moment. So yeah, I
Yeah.
can totally see it.
Let's not forget, people. You were drafting Isaiah Pacheco as a late second rounder a
That's
year or
true.
two ago. The same rules
My
apply. This
brother's
is the same
buns.
Kansas City offense. It's still Andy Reid. So let's just buckle up and take Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I mean, I'll jump in now. Similar guy, again, if you could start out your draft with this, which I think anyone can if they wants to, just based on the draft cost, like at the 1-2 turn, if you're at the back of the draft. My first one is Chase Brown. I think that he comes to mind for me as someone that I just feel very safe and comfortable with taking in the second round among that glut of running backs that go there. Like I like K9 as well, but like among the Hamptons and the Genties and the Saquons of the world, and even like your Derrick Henry, I personally just find myself like more likely to click Chase Brown than any of those guys. And I think that it is just because like there's nothing new there. He started the year really poorly last year, and he was a guy that I was like kind of all in on, which sucked. But if you were able to weather the storm and get down the stretch, he was pretty fantastic over the last 10 games of the fantasy season. He scored over 21 points per game, and was a complete beast in fantasy playoffs. So if you like were able to actually make it there with him, you definitely felt the dividend of that. But everything is the same. Like you just have Joe Burrow there. When Joe Burrow's on the field, again, same stat, like 21 points per game over the past 2.5 seasons when Burrow's on the field. You just need Joe Burrow to not get hurt. They didn't bring in any backfield competition. He still has just like the ghost of Samaje Perine behind him. And the offensive line should be a little bit better. Again, it's not like the best in the world, but it's better. And just everything's the same. The offense is going to be really good. There's going to be lots of red zone opportunities. He's going to catch a ton of passes. And I think as like a pure talent, I think that Chase Brown is a little bit underrated. I feel like if we had like a pretty secure workhorse type running back in the Cincinnati Bengals offense, but he was like, a first or second round pick from yesteryear that was on this roster, I feel like people would be going crazy about it. But because it's Chase Brown, because people maybe were a little bit thrown off the scent by the first half of last season and that he's not like a household name, I feel like he's held down a little bit more. Like, I do think that if he was just, I don't know, like if you did a little Freaky Friday and switched his name with Omarion Hampton, he's probably like a top 6 or 7 or 8 pick. But he's not. You can get Chase Brown in the mid to late second round for the most part. But I'm, again, willing to take him up to the 1-2 turn. I think just out of that running back glut, like, he's the one I feel most confident in. And, like, I think it's very easy for it to go right for him in a way where I think we are doing a little bit more projecting with some of the other guys in that area. So that's kind of where I land on him. He's a guy that I definitely will have a good bit of exposure to this year.
Yeah, I agree. Such a safe PPR floor. I think his over-under for receptions is set in between 60 and 65, which you rarely find with an early round running back. He's being criminally underdrafted, so love the pick of Chase Brown. Let's shift gears from the early rounds and go to the middle rounds. Not a flashy one here. It's going to be Jameson Williams, who I think is one of the biggest values in drafts this season. In the Drew Petzing system, this is dedicated for the X wide receiver, which Jameson Williams plays. We've seen that mentioned by Michael Wilson, who played in that system last season for Arizona. He mentioned the predication on the X wide receiver, and I think Jameson Williams will do just that. The coordinator really sold him last season prior to Dan Campbell taking the wheels and calling the offense. He was just an absolute nightmare, which is why you have such a bad reputation in your mind of Jameson Williams. If you drafted him, you probably moved on, sent him to the waiver wire, or traded him for pennies, because from week 1 to week 7, he was just unplayable. However, from week 7 onward, he was actually the wide receiver 9 in fantasy football. You're getting an elite value with Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I like JMO. I think he's a guy that I've been coming around to a little bit more as of the last couple weeks. He was kind of a name I wasn't thinking too much about before that, but he did weirdly finish as wide receiver 12 last year, which did not feel that way. I think the tricky part is like there are a lot of mouths to feed in Detroit for sure, and a lot of the big JMO games did come when like Amon-Ra missed a couple games with an ankle sprain or like was limited or whatever. But I do think that I honestly, what made me like get a little more bullish about it is I saw an interview with Jared Goff talking to someone. I forget who he was talking to, but basically like saying that Petzing comes in there, and I'm a little bit scared of Petzing. I think he's like kind of a dumbass. Ask any Cardinals fan, they'll tell you that they think he's a dumbass. Him coming in there isn't the best, but I think that they're not going to make the same mistake as last year and like give the reins over to the offensive coordinator and just run the Dan Campbell offense. Like basically in that interview with Goff, he was saying that like they're more getting Petzing up to speed on what they do than like trying to install like the Petzing scheme. Which is good, and as you mentioned, like we know Dan Campbell loves JMO, so I think that if they can be a little bit more consistent about getting him involved, that would be great. I think maybe going to have to see it to believe it a little bit, just because like I think we get fooled a little bit by like seeing the end of year fantasy finish at the end of the year and like not realizing, like you said, like it was pretty hard to pick the spots to put JMO in or not put him in, but I think that the where he's drafted at is pretty interesting to me. Like, and him being kind of like an explosive, exciting player, I feel like he doesn't get talked about a lot. Maybe like a lot of those talking points were used last year, and maybe people are scared a little bit more off the scent, similar in like a Chase Brown way, where like the first half of the season like just pissed people off. I know it pissed me off having him, but again, if we're running the Dan Campbell show, I think he's gonna make sure that JMO gets involved there. And I feel like on any given week it'll be like either or with him or Sam Laporta. It's like one or the other. And Amon-Ra is obviously going to get his, and same with Gibbs. So I think, yeah, JMO, where he's getting picked right now, I think he's a totally fine pick. He goes around like some of the older wide receivers, like your Devontae's, your Mike Evans. I mean, JMO's a fun one. I was kind of hands off earlier in the summer, but it's one that I'm definitely getting around to a little bit more now.
Yeah, when you're in the middle rounds, you should be shooting for upside. And if there's a guy that's really has that weak winning potential, it's going to be Jameson Williams. Love the
Yep.
big play potential, but tell us about another middle round wide receiver.
Yeah, this is a new one for me, and I don't really have like a ton of numbers to back this up per se, but it's Jaylen Waddle out in Denver. It's one that I have been coming around to in the past couple weeks. He wasn't going to be on any of these lists, but I think he's like getting there for me as a guy that I want to be actively targeting. He goes around the fourth round of drafts right now, and the reason why I wanted to talk about him specifically today is because he goes in that range of like the wide receiver like 16 to like 21, 22 or so. And I feel like, again, I could be totally off base, but I feel like getting that group right is going to be very important to having a good season this year in fantasy. Like, if you think about, and I like a good bit of them, it's an exciting group, but like, it's a lot of young guys and dudes that could like tier jump, where it's like you have your Waddle, you have like T-Mac, Egbuka, Ladd, Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers, like that whole crew. So I think like getting it right there is pretty important. And I think that the upside case for Waddle is very obvious, and I feel like it's so obvious that like people haven't been talking about it a ton. He's going into the season healthy. He obviously goes to a new system out there in Denver. They gave up a bunch of draft capital to go get him. It was a first round pick plus, so like they're going to use him. They're going to make him a focal point of the offense. I feel like we've heard about Sean Payton having the Joker role in his offense for the past like 3 years, with like really not good players in that role, and it never actually happened. Like, I remember them talking about fucking Evan Ingram in it last year. Like, that was never going to happen. But I think that we actually could have that with Jaylen Waddle. There was a quote that came out from the OC Davis Webb a couple days ago that they're going to use Waddle at every position that's not offensive line or quarterback. So that's music to my ears. I think all that really means is like they're just going to get him involved in different ways in the offense. I think like a lot of those manufactured screen targets that you see for like, very mediocre players like Marvin Mims or Troy Franklin, like that stuff's all going to go to Waddle now. I think like that weird rotation of like mid wide receivers in Denver is just kind of going to get consolidated into a guy that I think is like a real winner. And I think that in the past couple of years, because of how like frustrating the Miami offense has been in the sense of like having awesome talent but maybe minimizing it a bit in the pass game because of Tua's like noodle arm, I think people kind of forget how good Waddle is, and like having him with in an offense where I think he has about as clear a path to targets as you could get, is just a really exciting thing for me. I know we like Mike McDaniel as a play caller, but I think he's a great fit, Waddle is, in this Peyton system. And one thing that I'm excited to potentially see back is Waddle, like, deep explosives down the field. I feel like people forget, like, his whole thing coming into the league was that he was a burner and, like, he could get down the field and get behind the defense. But obviously with Tua, like, his brain scrambled eggs, but his arm is a noodle. Like, he's just a food guy.
And Tyreek was in that role.
Yeah, that too. But now, like, is he the best quarterback in the world? Bo Nix? No, but he's definitely a lot better than Tua. And if there's one thing he's not afraid to do is sling it down the field. And I think that if we get some of that back with Waddle this year, that's what takes him up a tier. And if he comes top 12 in terms of a finish, I wouldn't be shocked. We're hearing practice reports that it was like a no recording practice, but there was reporters tweeting that he beat Surtain for like a 60-yard touchdown, which is pretty sweet to hear. That's feeding my delusions a little bit. And the last thing I'd bring up here is just with Denver, I feel like they have the reputation of being like this defensive, grinded out team, which like I think they are. But what was shocking is that they actually were the highest pass attempt team in the NFL last year. Bo Nix had the most pass attempts by any quarterback. So I think they want to run the ball, but J.K. Dobbins is probably going to get hurt like he always does, and they don't necessarily have the personnel to like be this run first, ground and pound team. I think they want to air it out, and that's how Peyton's always been. And this is like the first pass catching weapon that they've really like kind of gone balls to the walls to go get. And I think that people are just kind of overthinking it a little bit with Waddle. And if he's like a second round pick in fantasy drafts next year, like that would not be at all shocking to me. And he's one that we probably will look back at the end of the year and be like, why was he picked there?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like a lot of it is just like health related. As a Jaylen Waddle guy in the past few seasons,
Yep.
Nothing drives me more crazy than seeing this guy go to the medical tent literally every single game. Outside of that, though, the one point I did want to mention with both Jameson Williams and Jaylen Waddle, these are middle round wide receivers. That's why it's so important to load up on those running backs early if possible, because it's really just a gold zone. You could make a list of 10 to 12 guys that are way going to outproduce those running backs in that range. Shifting gears to a late round pick, it's going to be Jordan Mason. I just really like the value here going outside of the top 35 running backs. Frank Smith comes in, and his outside zone scheme is similar to that Niners system that made Jordan Mason so great. I really like this value. The only competition is really Aaron Jones. I like Damon Claiborne, but he's just not going to get involved this season. So in those committee backfields, I'm going to take the younger, high upside running back almost 99% of the time. And I think Jordan Mason definitely has the highest ceiling, in my opinion. So he's one of my favorite late-round running back picks.
Yeah, I like the shot on Mason too. I mean, I've been talking about it all summer. Like, you just want to take a shot on those murky backfields, especially on teams that you think the offense like could be pretty good. So I like that because I think Minnesota could take a step up this year now with JJ like not being the quarterback and Kyler being in there. Again, I like Claiborne as much as the next guy, but I saw a tweet yesterday saying that he was a cut candidate potentially to like bring him back on the practice squad, which my dynasty taxi squad fell to its knees hearing that. So I think Claiborne's definitely farther off than some of us were hoping. But I think, yeah, Mason has a great opportunity. I mean, Jones is still there, but like he's, very brittle and very old at this point. And I think that, Mason's less of the pass catcher. But just in terms of like pure running success, like having a rushing quarterback in there and Kyler, or like a dude who is mobile in his own right, like that helps with rushing efficiency. And I think that if this offense is better, like I personally expect it to be, there's just going to be more scoring opportunities. So like, and when they get around the goal line, like Mason's definitely going to be the hammer there and the guy who's going to be punching it in. So again, yeah, he's almost like a free square at this draft cost. I think like targeting one of those guys, if you disagree with all that and you think it's going to be Aaron Jones, like fine, take Aaron Jones. But I think that like definitely should be taking one of those running backs in a situation like that. And I think Mason's a pretty good call.
Yeah, it's him and Bill for me late in drafts. Those committee running back rooms, I'm always going to shoot for the upside. And I think they both kind of pose that similar upside. It wouldn't shock me if both Washington and Minnesota see a significant uptick in production in offense. And let's not forget, this is still Kevin O'Connell. I think he's going to put a good offense on the football field. They have playmakers everywhere. And if Kyler can even just be a smidge above J.J. McCarthy, if you're getting like a running back of 70% production in this backfield, you're going to be very, very happy.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for those like round two running backs that we both really like and like just team structure wise of like I want to hit running back early if I can and then capitalize on mid-round wide receivers, I would have talked about Jay Jettas in this conversation as well. So like I definitely believe in a Minnesota bounce back. I think that even if they're a league average offense, I think Mason will like 100% pay off that ADP and is a guy that you'll probably feel like comfortable as like maybe a little stinkier RB2, but one that you can rely on, and then like definitely a flexible guy. But as I talk about those mid-round wide receivers, I'm going to take it back up the draft board a little bit because I have one more that I want to talk about. And I know I've talked about him a couple times already, but it's going to be Christian Watson out in Green Bay. I think he might be potentially like my single favorite pick. He's at least maybe one or two. But I really like the situation for him. I think it's just set up so perfectly. I think if you want to, build the case, again, I already did a whole video about this. I'll link it in the description if you want to watch because I yell a lot about Watson. But basically, if you think about last year, like essentially it kind of proved like he's a good player, number one. Like he's not just a gimmicky guy. He was really good last year. Like if you look at the reception perception stuff, like his route success and all of that was like positive, like a lot of green there. He also ran more than just go balls last year. I feel like that is his perception. Like the two things they think when they think Christian Watson is like, okay, he gets hurt and he runs 9 routes. And last year, like, yeah, he did run a lot of deeper routes, but it was diversified a little bit more and he was pretty good in terms of route success on a lot of those. So he was in a little bit of a different role, but he was still in obviously like a wide receiver timeshare. It's been like the frustration of Green Bay the past couple seasons. It's been a 4 to 5 wide receiver rotation. Last year it was 5. And now you consolidate that. It's like what everyone's wanted this whole time. You send off Dontavian Wicks to Philly, Romeo Doubs leaves to New England, and now you got 3 guys in there that are all going to play very like distinct roles. And that's come out and been basically guaranteed and like verified by the reporters in camp, by literally the quarterback himself. Like Jordan Love has interviews where he's talked about it, where Watson's going to be this Z wide receiver in the offense with Jaden Reed in the slot and Matthew Golden being the primary X. And why I like that is because he'll run a lot more routes, right? And we're going to get a lot more like diversity of targets where you're still going to get those explosives down the field, but he's also going to be moved around the formation more. He's going to be like that motion wide receiver, getting some like free releases on the line, and getting more stuff going in the intermediate part of the field where I think Watson is really good. And on top of that, right, he's going to play more snaps because they have lesser wide receivers there. So like last year, he came off the torn ACL. In the games that he played, he was wide receiver 19 in points per game, and that was only on about like 60% snaps on average, like for the season. Now they don't have dudes to like rotate through. Like he's going to be on the field more. He's going to be a full-time player. Like if all goes well, he stays healthy, which again is another variable, but like there's no reason to think he won't. He should at least be like an 80% snap guy, and that's come through again, like small sample, but it's been that way in the preseason, and he's been playing the role that we're all wanting and expecting him to play. So if he does that and like extrapolate it out, like it could be a real big time hit that you're getting in the mid rounds. And you know the other piece of it is the red zone work too, where like Dobbs sneaky was like their primary read in the red zone a lot of the time, where now with the wide receiver group that they have, like Watson at 6'4" is like the clearest dude who could potentially eat into that more so than like a smaller Jaden Reed and Matt Golden. So I'm not even like building that into the calculus, like thinking he's going to score more touchdowns, but it could happen as well. And with the draft cost, like I think with as clear of a case this makes, like you don't have to take him until like the mid-6th round. He goes at like wide receiver 30. And I think that like even if this hits like an average outcome, he's going to outpace this and be a flex level guy for you. But I think he is a dude who could very much level up this year. And it's a Green Bay passing game that I just want to target. I think their defense is going to be a little bit worse this year. Their offensive line has issues. There's talks about a Josh Jacobs suspension. So I think that they're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more too. I like being in on these pass catchers. I think, if I didn't bring up Watson today, like Golden is another guy that I like later in drafts too. I think like take a shot on one of those two guys. I'm even cool with you taking both just at cost. Like it's doable to do. But Watson is one of my favorites. I think he's going to be the primary read in this offense that's going to throw the ball a little bit more, and he's going to have a more complete role than we're used to seeing from him, and should be a good year. They paid him to do it. He gets the big extension, and blast off for Watson.
Yeah, I think Christian Watson's one of those guys that we're definitely in lockstep about. My main argument that you mentioned is just going to be that red zone workload. Romeo Doubs was top 10 in the NFL in total red zone targets. Yeah, he might not have had the fantasy production to back it up. However, he was Jordan Love's favorite guy inside of the 20-yard line. Christian Watson, now the only wide receiver over 6 feet tall. And if you have Tucker Kraft coming off a torn ACL, it just wouldn't shock me if he starts out very, very hot. You also have Josh Jacobs maybe getting suspended. I just think Green Bay is just going to be a very pass-happy offense.
Yeah, agree with that. I think that like one of the arguments against Watson's production last year was like it was in the second half of the season where Tucker Kraft was gone with the ACL and that he's going to eat up a lot of those targets, which I think could be fair. But I think that like if you sub out Dobbs and what's his name, Wicks, and you bring in Kraft, like I think it's like Kraft is a better player than those guys, but I think like the two of those in combination, like I think it kind of evens out in terms of like target competition. And if they increase the pass rate a little bit, it's something where we could be very happy with the output for the Packers this year. So yeah, totally agree.
And Green Bay does this. They do this every year with a guy coming off the injury. We saw it with Christian Watson. They're going to limit his snaps. I'm talking about Tucker Kraft. So I really think that Christian Watson could be a first-half hero and that you're just getting him at an absolute discount. However, let's go back to my final favorite pick for 2026. It's going to be in the early rounds. It's going to be Brock Bowers. He's neck and neck with Kenneth Walker as some of my favorite picks this season. And I just love the value here. Kyle Pitts was the tight end 3 when Kirk Cousins was the starting quarterback. And Brock Bowers is probably 100 times better of a player than Kyle Pitts. And yes, I know I still love Kyle Pitts, all you fan clubs out there. However, for Brock Bowers, it's just all about the talent profile and Clint Kubiak. He's going to be featured in a lot of those first-read targets, and in Kubiak's system, I just think Bowers is a threat for double-digit touchdowns and is an absolute machine.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Bowers hits double-digit touchdowns, like he's a league-winning type of guy. I'm definitely in lockstep on this one. I think that like it's a rare situation where he gets a pretty unanimous environmental upgrade with like coach, offensive line, quarterback, but also no upgrades in target competition. So they're going to throw the ball to him like as many times as they possibly can. Kubiak showed us last year in Seattle that if you have like a total mager receiver, like they're going to get him the ball. Like JSN's target share was like historically high last year. And if this offense even like approaches, league average, which I doubt it will, but like if it isn't as just anemic as it was last year, like even if you can get Bowers up to like that 8 touchdown range, that's where I think that like things get really, really spicy for him. And like you said, like I think the bet is on him just being like the actual generational talent. I know that the word generational is thrown around a lot, but I think for Brock Bowers, it being, a generational tight end, I don't think that's like an insane thing to say. So definitely taking him as my tight end 1 this year over McBride, and yeah, cool taking him in the second round. I think, as you brought up earlier, I think this is a guy that's probably more likely, if you get like a Bijan start, to be there for you at the back of the second, more so than like a Ken Walker. So if you're not able to start, with 2 RBs, if you get like an elite level RB1 and then you pair him with Bowers, I think that's a great way to start off your draft for sure.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think you're in agreement too. We're Bowers over McBride every single day of the week. He's just going to clear him from a talent profile, and I actually sneaky like the QB and coordinator better for Brock Bowers. And one other point that I forgot to mention is just last year he was hurt the entire season. Yeah. So he had that bone bruise, and now it's just like he's PCL. Fully healthy, and you just got a watered-down Brock Bowers. Now you just go 110%. He's just going to be an absolute steal of a value.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough to be a steal in the second round, but I think that he's someone who can certainly pay it off and be worthwhile. I know it's like a little bit scary to take a tight end that early, but all in. I think to close it out here, going from one Brock to another, I'm going to Brock Purdy. It's a quarterback I want to talk about today. I think that he is the quarterback I'll probably have on the majority of my teams this year because I think he's just the best of the late round quarterbacks, and I truly just like don't understand the draft cost. He goes around like QB 14, QB 15 in ADP right now, and I would take him over probably like half the dudes that are getting drafted ahead of him. He goes in the triple digit picks, and like again, the situation only improves for Purdy, right? If you think about last year, he was a guy I loved last year too. The injury kind of screwed that up a little bit, but when he was on the field, he was awesome. He played in 10 games, and he was QB2 in points per game in the games played. Like no cherry pick stat, just when he played, he was QB2, only behind Josh Allen, another guy who was fantastic in the fantasy playoffs. And he's still in the Kyle Shanahan system. The team that he played with last year in terms of surrounding cast, like everyone was beat up. He had like no wide receivers. George Kittle missed a lot of time. And now we get upgrades there. You get Mike Evans, right? Is he going to play all 17 games? No. But in the games he does play, he's probably the best wide receiver that Purdy has ever had, especially in like a red zone capacity. That's somewhere where passing touchdowns could come up. And then, we could go to the Strib Club as well. That's a guy that I'm also excited about. That's another weapon for Brock there in San Fran. And again, it just comes down to the draft cost. Like he's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in 3 straight years. He has a very sneaky rushing floor. He was actually 8th in quarterback rushing fantasy points per game last year. So like he scrambles a little bit more than you'd expect. And it's just a Shanahan offense where like they score fantasy points, and I think he's a better player than people like to give him credit for. And he's a guy that you can take in like the 9th or 10th round. So again, like with all the values that we talked about earlier in the draft, with like just hammering the flex positions, like running back, wide receiver, and to an extent tight end, like I'm so cool to wait on quarterback because again, there's a bunch of them that I like late. And Purdy, I think, is my favorite one. I would have him all the way up at like QB 7 or so, and you don't have to take him that high. So he's a guy I feel very comfortable with as like an every week QB1 that you don't have to draft that way. And is again probably like my favorite quarterback value in drafts these days.
I just don't get like, is he not like a sexy pick? Because there's no world in which he should be going behind Jackson Dart. He's just the better player, better offense. Mike Evans is just going to be an absolute touchdown threat. You mentioned it, but like Matthew Stafford last season, part of the reason why he was so good for fantasy, it's just because he just threw it to Devontae Adams every single play. So I think Brock Purdy could definitely kind of outproduce his ADP pretty easily going as the QB 14.
Yeah, and I think that it's just nice too that he can be like a set it and forget it type of guy. Like he's not someone that you're drafting to like, I don't know, stream the position. Like he's a guy that I feel confident throwing in there every week. And he's someone that I think will just produce regularly. And I feel very confident about it.
Sneaky rushing floor too.
Yeah. Hey, the white guys can run too. Don't forget. But yeah, cool. Well, yeah, I think we can end it off there. I know we've been yapping for a little bit. But these are guys that we can't get off our minds. We're hot and heavy. We're in the trenches, and guys that we can't stop drafting. So We're going to call it there. Let us know in the comments what you think of these, how bad the arguments are. Yell if you disagree.
Episode one. Only room for improvement from here. Listen, I'm expecting to hear some hate. The first half of it a little bit stuttery. Fine. However, now we finish it off smooth. Found my rhythm. Found my flow.
Yeah, you can keep saying however. That's good. Yeah, we got to break you out of TikTok voice a little bit.
Listen, this is a guy that's been programmed to make those 30-second videos. Now I'm shaping into the long-term content. Just believe it'll take some time, but we got it in our bag.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. Again, episode 1. So lots of only room to go up. But yeah, yell at me in the comments about how you hate all these picks. I can't wait to see you be wrong. I'm right, and Dom is right as well, and we're ready to take our league mates to the woodshed in our drafts and get all the best players. So hopefully you're drafting these guys along with us, and I will see you in the next episode.
Peace.